The ceramic mug left a faint ring on my notepad. Cold coffee, untouched. I could still feel the steam from it earlier that morning, but now it sat forgotten, like the idea I'd scribbled into the margins the night before. Outside, a slow drizzle gathered on the window panes, casting a gray filter across the fourth-floor conference room. Inside, my boss was speaking, confident, animated, performing, really. And somewhere in that performance, I recognized my words. But my name never came up. I'm Eric, 34, mid-level product strategist at a mid-size SaaS company in Chicago. You know the type. Ping pong tables no one uses, collaboration pods, stale snacks, and a CEO who thinks quoting the lean startup is a personality. I've been here 6 years, long enough to know where the bodies are buried, but not senior enough to speak at their funerals. I'm not a rock star. I don't wear Patagonia vests. I don't interrupt women in meetings. I just try to do the job right, solve problems, keep my head down. And yeah, sometimes that means staying late to rethink a feature no one asked me to fix. Like I did last Thursday. It started with a Slack message from Sarah, one of our CX leads. Any chance you can look into the drop-off rates in our onboarding flow? Finance is twitchy again. Nothing formal. Just a casual, hey, help me out kind of thing. I don't report to her, but we've worked on enough projects together that she knows I'll dig in if it matters. So I did. What I found was this tiny, unnecessary questionnaire buried on step 3 of our onboarding. Optional fields, poorly worded, totally non-essential. But for some reason, 27% of users dropped off there, just bailed. No error messages, no rage clicking. They just ghosted. It bugged me. I started mocking up a revised flow, trimming the fluff, simplifying the CTA, even reworking the microcopy. Not in Figma, just on paper, with notes in the margins and arrows pointing to alternate paths. By 10 that night, I had a full-page schematic of a leaner, tighter onboarding process. I snapped a pic and emailed it to myself with the subject line, WIP CX Funnel Recut, Eric Notes. I figured I'd show it to Sarah Monday, get her thoughts, maybe pitch it at the next sprint review. I didn't get the chance. Monday, 9:12 a.m. Our all-hands sync started like any other. Todd, our VP of Product, was presenting this quarter's focus areas to the exec team. I wasn't supposed to speak. I wasn't even sitting at the table. I was behind the row of chairs, on the built-in window ledge, half balancing my laptop on my knees. Todd clicked to the next slide. Frictionless onboarding, Phase 1 simplification. And there it was. My redesign, my layout, my flow. He'd cleaned it up, sure. Used company fonts. Removed my comments. But the structure, the logic, even the freaking variable naming convention in the sample code snippet, those were mine. Simple is scalable, Todd said, gesturing at the slide like he'd spent the weekend meditating on it. We need to respect our users' time. This version reduces 3 steps into 1, without compromising data integrity. I felt my jaw tighten. No one noticed. They were too busy nodding. At 9:16, my phone buzzed. It was Sarah. Did you give this to Todd? Or, nope, I replied. WTF? I didn't confront him. Not right away. Part of me wanted to believe there was a mix-up. Maybe Sarah had shared my idea with someone else in passing. Maybe Todd stumbled on my mock-up during a Slack file search. Maybe he meant to credit me. That optimism lasted until 3:47 p.m. when I checked my inbox. Thread subject, confidential onboarding funnel revamp, internal kickoff. I wasn't on it. There were 11 people CC'd. Product managers, 2 designers. Even Phil from Analytics, who literally said, I haven't looked at onboarding in months during our last retro, but not me, not the guy who redesigned the damn thing. That night, I went back to my apartment and stared at the notebook. The ring of dried coffee still marked the corner. My girlfriend, Lena, noticed me sulking. You okay? I wanted to tell her. I wanted to vent, to rage, to unravel the whole stupid office dynamic. But I just said, I think I lost something I made. She nodded, not fully getting it, but sensing the weight. You'll make another. That's what you do. I kissed her forehead and went to bed early. But sleep didn't come easy, because I knew something now. This wasn't just a one-time oversight. It was a pattern, a quiet erasure, the kind you don't notice until your ideas start showing up with someone else's name on them. Tuesday morning, 7:38 a.m. I arrived early. Too early. The office was mostly empty. I went straight to my desk, pulled out the same notebook, and took a deep breath. I flipped to a fresh page and wrote, Day 1, watch. Document. Don't react. If they wanted to steal my work, fine. But this time, I'd keep receipts. The security lights in the office stairwell flickered as I made my way up. It was Wednesday, 6:12 a.m. Even the janitor hadn't clocked in yet. I wasn't there to impress anyone or grind extra hours. I was there to think. Alone. My notebook sat on the desk, open to yesterday's entry. Day 1, watch, document, don't react. So that's what I did. I opened my laptop, slid into Slack's search bar, and typed, onboarding from Todd. The first result was the thread I wasn't on. The second was worse. Todd, Monday 6:04 p.m. Appreciate everyone's input so far. Excited to build this out. Looping in design now. There was no input. Not from me. Not from Sarah. It was a lie, framed like consensus. And worse, design was already looped in. I toggled over to Figma. I wasn't technically supposed to be in the design team's shared files, but permissions had been sloppy ever since we shifted to hybrid. There it was, onboarding_v 2_WIP_toddcomments.fig. The mockup was nearly identical to the one I had drawn by hand, only now it had a name. Project Leaplight. Like slapping a brand name on a stolen bike. At 9 a.m., I joined the morning stand-up with my usual quiet presence. We were all muted until called on. Zoom squares in grid formation, my camera on, Todd's off. I scanned the gallery. Sarah gave me a look. A half-second raise of her eyebrows that said, You seeing this? I nodded back like, Yeah, I am. When it got to Todd, his voice was chipper. We've officially greenlit Project Leaplight. Let's prioritize wireframes by EOD Friday, and if possible, get a working prototype before Q4 planning starts. Nobody clapped, but I could see heads nodding. Melissa from UX actually said, Love this direction. Of course she did. She thought it came from him. And I stayed silent. Wednesday, 11:43 a.m. HR coffee chat. There's a thing we do every month called culture check-ins. One-on-one coffee chats with HR, ostensibly to improve communication and workplace well-being. I'd skipped the last 3, but this time I showed up. Mina, our HR rep, smiled when I walked in. Hey, Eric. Long time no see. Vanilla latte? Sure. We sat in the tiny breakout room with acoustic foam on the walls that somehow made everything sound more awkward. So how are things? She asked, stirring her tea. I thought about giving her the real answer. Instead, I said, I've been observing a few patterns. Can I ask something without it becoming a thing? She leaned in. Of course. If someone contributes meaningfully to a project, like a full redesign of a flow, but doesn't get invited to the kickoff or credited or involved in any next steps, is there a process for that? She set her cup down slower than usual. You mean, hypothetically? Sure, hypothetically. She hesitated. Well, if there's a formal complaint, we can open a channel. But we also encourage people to speak directly to their leads or flag it during performance reviews. Even if the lead is the one who... I trailed off. She got it. Mina sighed. You're not the only one to feel invisible here. But documentation helps. If you want to talk more, I'm here. I thanked her, walked out, and added a new line to my notebook. Day 3, invisible, not equal to powerless. Start building a case. Friday, 4:07 p.m. Sarah's desk. You sure you want to do this? She asked, sliding me a flash drive. No, I said, but I think I have to. On that drive were the original notes I sent her. Time-stamped photos. The exact messages where we talked through the redesign. The full thread. She looked over her shoulder like someone might be watching. You didn't hear it from me, but Todd has done this before. Twice. With Lauren, and before that, James. What happened to them? James left. Lauren's still here, but quieter. I nodded. I don't want to be quieter. Weekend silence. I didn't open my laptop once. Instead, I took Lena to that Greek place she liked downtown, let her pick the wine, and tried not to think about work. I let her talk about her fellowship, her crazy supervisor, her fear of public speaking. I laughed when she did. But Sunday night, after she fell asleep, I opened my email. Drafted a message. Subject, Project Leaplight, Original Attribution. Hi, Todd. I've noticed that the onboarding flow currently being used in Project Leaplight closely mirrors a schematic I independently drafted last Thursday. I'm attaching my original notes, timestamps, and email for reference. I'm not raising a complaint at this time. I just appreciate appropriate credit and involvement in the design and rollout process, since this was originally my concept. Let me know how you'd like to proceed. Eric. I stared at it for 20 minutes. Then I hit send. Monday, 10:23 a.m. No response. Nothing. Not a reply. Not a Slack ping. Not even a read receipt. I checked the recipient. Yep. Sent. I waited 2 more days. Still nothing. And then something worse happened. Wednesday, 2:46 p.m. Clarification call. Calendar invite, 15 Bauer Sync, Leaplight clarification. Attendees, me, Todd, Mina, HR, and surprise guest, Camilla from legal. That was the moment I realized this wasn't just about credit. It was about control. When I joined the call, Todd was already talking. Just want to align on expectations here, he said smoothly. We're all on the same team, but we also want to be clear on boundaries around idea ownership, especially in collaborative environments. Mina gave me a forced smile. Camilla said, Eric, we understand you had concerns about attribution. I submitted a redesign. I can prove it. I just wanted acknowledgement. Todd interjected. Of course. And we're all grateful for iterative thinking. But once ideas are in the org's ecosystem, especially in shared files or Slack, it becomes less about who did what and more about team outcomes. I felt the heat rise in my chest. That doesn't give you the right to cut people out of meetings, I said, or take credit. Camilla cleared her throat. Let's keep this constructive. Todd smiled like a man who'd played this game before. and won. When the call ended, I didn't go back to work. I went to the park, sat on a bench, watched some kid chase pigeons, opened my notebook and wrote, Day 7. If they won't play fair, I stop playing quiet. The subway air was stale and electric. Monday morning again, and the red line stalled just long enough between Jackson and Monroe to let a full minute of silence pass after the conductor's last announcement. I clutched my messenger bag, thumb tapping the corner of my notebook through the canvas. This time, there was no steam-ringed coffee, no high hopes. Just one word scratched across the new page. Fireproof. Not the company. Not Todd. Me. If they wanted to make me invisible, I'd make it impossible. Monday, 9:04 a.m. Stand up. Quick wins, people, Todd said, clapping his hands like we were seals waiting for sardines. I said nothing, but this time I did something else. When my turn came, I unmuted and said, I've been reviewing CX data to build a new segmentation model. It's still in draft, but I'll have something presentable by Friday. That was a lie. I hadn't even started. But I said it out loud, on record, in front of 7 other team members, with Melissa and Phil nodding along like it was already in motion, and more importantly, I dropped it in Slack afterward. Eric Davis, 9:12 a.m. CX segmentation revamp draft expected by EOW will share results and logic in Team Drive for async review. Then I did something else. I created a private folder. /CX_segmentation_rework. Permissions, view only. Shared with myself, Sarah, Lena, my personal Gmail. A backup Dropbox account I hadn't touched since college. I made a working document, titled it Davis_CX_revamp_original_notes_V0. Let them try to take it this time. Wednesday, 3:38 p.m. Sarah's desk again. You're really gonna play the long game, huh? She asked, handing me a Twix bar from her drawer. No one else is gonna play it for me, I said. Smart. Just don't get sloppy. Todd's slippery. I know. Also, she lowered her voice, Melissa's been asking around. Trying to figure out why you're suddenly CCing people on everything. I want an audience, I said. If I get erased again, I want witnesses. She smiled. God, I hope you go full Scorsese with this. I'm not looking for revenge, I said. Just proof. Thursday, 11:03 a.m. Coffee with James. I found James on LinkedIn after Sarah mentioned him, the guy Todd ghosted out of a previous project. He was freelancing now. I sent a connection request, followed by a simple message. Hey, worked at Parallax too. Wanted to ask you something discreet if you're open. To my surprise, he agreed to coffee near Ogilvy. James wore a navy hoodie and carried the tired shoulders of someone who had fought a quiet war and lost. You're not the first, he said, stirring too much sugar into his cold brew. He pitched my internal dashboard tool to leadership as a team effort after blocking me from the planning deck. What did you do? Tried to escalate. Got flagged for inflammatory tone in Slack. Then they cut me from the QBR. It became a write-up. I left before it snowballed. So you never got credit? He shook his head. But I saved everything. Every document. Every version. I'll send it to you. Why now? He smiled bitterly. Because someone should get justice, even if it's not me. Friday, 4:01 p.m. The open folder move. I posted my draft CX segmentation notes on the shared drive, added a changelog, timestamped, clear versioning, then I dropped it in Slack. Eric Davis, 4:02 p.m. Draft uploaded to shared folder. Open to feedback from product plus CX. Ping me if questions. This time, Sarah reacted with a thumbs up. Phil added a check mark. Even Melissa commented, "We'll review on Monday." Looks promising. And Todd? He said nothing. But I saw him viewing the file at 4:18 p.m. Monday, 9:33 a.m., the echo begins. At our next sync, Todd tried a new angle. "I want to acknowledge some strong thinking from the team last week," he said, "particularly around CX streamlining. There's some really good segmentation work floating around. Great start to what we're calling Project Lucent." Lucent? He was rebranding again. I raised my hand on Zoom. "Are we renaming the segmentation doc I uploaded Friday?" Todd blinked. Yes, that's the idea. Reframe it for exec-level buy-in." "Okay," I said. "Just want to confirm authorship and attribution remain accurate, since the core logic is mine." A pause. One beat longer than comfortable. "Of course," Todd said. "Full credit where due." I screen captured that moment, kept it in a private folder named Insurance 2025 Q3 Attribution Trail. Tuesday, 2:16 p.m. Camilla again. A surprise drop-in on Zoom. "Hey, Eric, just wanted to circle back post-call. Everything okay after the leap light stuff?" I nodded. "It's clearer now." "Good. And just so you know, HR flagged your recent doc trail as thorough." "Is that bad?" She hesitated. "It's uncommon." "But not against policy." "Cool," I said. "I'm just building clarity." "Just keep things collaborative." "I always have." She didn't smile, but she logged off. Thursday, 7:02 p.m. Todd's mistake. That night, Sarah sent me a screenshot. It was from her inbox. Subject, Lucent Flow, Early Ideation Call. Sender, Todd. Included, Melissa, Phil, 2 designers, and Sarah. Not included, me. But at the bottom of the email, Todd had pasted a link to my private Dropbox backup. He'd shared the wrong link, not the company drive version, the personal one, the one I only gave to Lena. He'd stolen it again, and this time he'd done it wrong. Sarah's reply was short. "Hey, this link looks private. Want to double-check before I forward it to design?" He didn't respond, but 20 minutes later, the email was recalled, and the next morning, the link was replaced. Still, the damage was done. I had screenshots, IP traces, version control diffs, all pointing to a clear pattern. Friday, 5:55 p.m. New email thread. From Eric Davis to Legal, HR, and CEO. Subject, Formal IP attribution request plus incident documentation. Hi all. I'm submitting a formal request for acknowledgement regarding Project Leaplight and Project Lucent. Attached are time-stamped documents, Slack records, and inadvertent evidence of IP misappropriation by my supervisor, Todd Whitman. I am requesting formal credit on all relevant initiatives. Retroactive inclusion in communication threads. Mediation with a third-party observer present. I have no desire for escalation beyond this, but I will escalate if unacknowledged. Respectfully, Eric Davis. My phone buzzed at exactly 6:42 a.m. on Monday morning. Mina, HR. Eric, please check your calendar. CEO wants to connect today. Keep it confidential for now. I sat on the edge of my bed, staring at the message while Lena brushed her teeth behind the bathroom door. It didn't feel real. We weren't even supposed to be on the same radar. I was a mid-level strategist. He was the CEO. I opened my calendar. Subject, 1 p.m. Product Attribution Review, private. Attendees: Mina, HR, Camilla, Legal, Todd Whitman, VP Product, Eric Davis. Location: CEO Conference Room, 6th floor. 10:43 a.m. Todd's office, unscheduled drop-in. "You're pulling in the CEO," Todd said without looking up from his monitor. I had stopped by under the pretense of checking in on handoff protocols, but we both knew what this was. "I didn't CC him directly," I said. "Legal did." Todd scoffed. This could have been a coaching conversation. Now it's a circus. I shrugged. I tried coaching myself through being left off threads. That didn't work. He finally looked up. "You realize this kind of escalation reflects on you too, right? Even if you're right, no one wants to work with someone who sends lawyers after their boss." "I'm not sending lawyers. I'm asking for acknowledgement." He leaned back and sighed. "Eric, you're not a martyr. You're just exhausting." I smiled. Good thing I document everything. 12:56 p.m. Outside CEO's conference room. The 6th floor felt colder, quieter. The glass-walled meeting room had a smart tint on, so no one could see in from the open bullpen. Mina and Camilla were already inside when I arrived. I was about to enter when I heard Todd's voice just before the door opened. "It's not theft if it's built on team collaboration." Mina's expression went still when she saw me. Todd turned and plastered on a half smile. Our CEO, Colin Briggs, entered 30 seconds later. He looked younger than I expected, maybe mid-40s, no tie, gray at the temples, espresso in hand. His tone was calm, professional, but clipped. "All right," Colin said, closing the door behind him. "Let's talk about Leaplight. And Lucent. And ideas. And who gets left out of email threads." He didn't sit right away. Neither did anyone else. 1:02 p.m. The first 10 minutes. Mina handed Colin a printed folder. Yes, printed, of my documentation. He flipped through each page as I spoke. Dates, screenshots, file timestamps, Slack messages, the Dropbox mix-up. "I'm not claiming I invented onboarding," I said, steady and deliberate. "But I did create that flow. Independently. And twice now, it's been rebranded without attribution. And in both cases, I was intentionally excluded from planning comms." Todd was already shaking his head. "Let's be clear," he said. "The first version Eric sent wasn't a finished document. It was a napkin sketch." "That's true," I said. "But a napkin sketch stops being a sketch when it gets implemented line for line." Colin held up the printout of my notebook photo. "This was taken Thursday night?" I nodded. 10:46 p.m. Emailed it to myself. Sarah saw it Friday morning. Camilla chimed in, neutral but firm. "Our review confirms the timestamp metadata is intact. It predates the Leaplight wireframe files by about 36 hours. Todd tried to pivot. "Ideas move fast in product. If we paused to notarize every contribution, we'd never ship." Colin's eyes narrowed. "That's not what's being asked here." "Is it?" He looked at me. I shook my head. "I'm asking to be credited when I do work, and to not be cut out of projects I originated." Silence. Then Colin sat down. 1:13 p.m. The reframe. "Let me offer a perspective," Colin said. "Eric's raised a pattern. Not a single mistake, but a repeated experience that undermines our values. If attribution falls apart here, it falls apart everywhere." Todd folded his arms. "We're not running a patent office." Colin nodded. "We're not. But we are running a company that tells people we reward initiative. You can't tell employees to take ownership and then ghost them when they do." That landed. Mina spoke next. We've received similar feedback before. About Eric. About others. It's part of why we launched the Attribution Guidelines pilot last quarter. Todd blinked. I thought that was still optional. It was, Mina said. It won't be anymore. 1:24 p.m. Consequences. Colin turned back to me. Eric, here's what's going to happen. You'll be credited as primary contributor for both Leaplight and Lucent. Your version history and design notes will be appended to the internal documentation, and you'll be added as a co-presenter when we pitch to the exec board. My throat caught a little, but I nodded. Thank you. Also, he said, turning to Todd, we're moving Leaplight and Lucent out of the product VP's direct oversight for the rest of the quarter. Todd's eyes flared. You're removing me? I'm restructuring the initiative to reflect collaborative equity. Eric will report directly to me for the next 8 weeks. Boom. That was the moment I knew Todd wouldn't forgive me. Back at my desk, Sarah walked over without a word and placed a blue post-it on my keyboard. It read, Holy shit. I flipped it over. You're officially a problem. In the best way. I smiled. But deep down, I knew what came next. The retaliation wouldn't be obvious. It'd be subtle, delayed. Sudden changes in project assignments. Performance review landmines. Unflattering narratives whispered behind closed doors. I was prepared. I'd already started the second notebook. This one had a label. Aftermath. Friday, 6:52 p.m. Lena's voice. You look, I don't know, not happy, but lighter. We were sitting on the balcony. The sun was already gone, but the sky still held that burnt orange afterglow. I hadn't told her everything, just enough to explain why I was checking my email every 5 minutes for the past week. I feel like I finally spoke a language they couldn't ignore, I said. Did it fix anything? Not really. But now they know I know how to speak it. She smiled. You gonna stay? I don't know, I said honestly. I've spent so long trying to be useful. I forgot what it means to be respected. That night, I didn't write in my notebook. I just slept. No tabs open, no drafts waiting, no version control windows blinking on the second screen. But I knew the final test hadn't arrived yet, and I knew Todd wasn't done. The last thing I expected to hear from Todd after everything was an apology. So when he knocked on the frame of my cubicle the following Thursday, casual like we were back on good terms, I didn't bother hiding my expression. You got a minute? He asked, leaning halfway in. I nodded, wordlessly. I wasn't going to give him an audience, just enough silence to make him talk first. He took a breath. I wanted to say, I didn't handle things right. That wasn't an apology. That was a deflection. I'm not interested in post-game commentary, I said, not looking up from my screen. I'm busy rebuilding what you almost buried. He didn't flinch. He'd come rehearsed. I think we both made this more complicated than it needed to be. That got me to look up. No, I said. You made it complicated. I just refused to disappear quietly. He stood there for another few seconds, waiting for me to throw him a bone. I didn't. Finally, he walked off. That was the last time we spoke directly. 3 weeks later, Q4 all hands. Colin kept his promise. When the Project Lucent presentation rolled around, I was on the stage. My name was on the deck. My diagrams were behind me, refined but not whitewashed. My logic was credited in the footnotes. And when I introduced the flow to the full company, I did it with quiet, deliberate authority. Not performative, Not smug, just honest. This version improves onboarding completion by 14%, reduces the time to conversion window by 21%, and removes 40% of the user exits we previously chalked up to user error. But none of this is magic. It's just listening. Applause. Not thunderous, but real. After the meeting, I got 5 messages from departments I never interact with. Been there. Glad someone finally stood up. Thank you for naming it out loud. Can I pick your brain sometime? Reminds me of a thing that happened with my manager last year. You inspired me. You made it okay to give a damn again. That last one stuck. October 10th, my apartment. I sat on the balcony again, same time of day. Lena brought out 2 beers without asking. I had a new offer in my inbox, director level at a competitor, fully remote, 20% bump. No Todd. You gonna take it? She asked, sliding into the seat next to me. I should, I said. It's everything I wanted. Money, title, autonomy. But I don't want to run. She studied me. Is it running, or is it choosing something better? I thought about that for a long time. Choosing something better? That night, I drafted my resignation letter. I didn't send it right away. Instead, I started writing another document, one I never planned to share. A PDF. The silent credit tax, why attribution isn't a favor. It wasn't a takedown. It wasn't even about Todd. It was about the pattern. The way certain people are always looped in and others have to knock just to be remembered. The way systems reward the loudest voices, not the most useful ones. The way credit becomes currency, and some of us are never allowed to touch the register. I uploaded it to my personal site. Within a week, it had been shared internally at 3 other companies. Subject: RE, exit interview request. Eric Dash. First, I want to say thank you. Your contributions to Parallax over the past 6 years were meaningful in ways that stats alone can't capture. I'm sorry it took a conflict for us to see the cracks. You weren't the problem. You just pointed to one. I've attached your final review and a recommendation letter. Doors open if you ever want to come back. Best, Mina. Attached was a letter from Colin. 2 sentences stood out. Eric demonstrated what most employees never get to: how to lead without being handed permission. We didn't promote him fast enough, but he promoted the culture just by refusing to stay silent. I never opened a 3rd one, not because I stopped watching, but because I stopped waiting for permission to matter. If this story moved you, subscribe for more real-life confessions and emotional journeys like this one.